Well, Ninette Kelley is with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and she is joining us from New York. Ninette, why is the UNGA just now addressing refugees and migrants in this first ever summit of its kind, when this has been an issue building over time with now a record 65 million people globally fleeing their homes?
Well, I think all would agree that when the refugees started to arrive in Europe, it brought the situation much more to the fore. But you're absolutely right. The situation's been going on for a long time, but now the world realizes we're at a historic crossroads. We've seen an increase in forced displacement. We've seen increase over the last recent decades, and most significantly since 2010, we've seen a 50% increase in the number of refugees. So these refugees and displaced persons are living for a protracted period of time in countries that are middle to low-income countries that are struggling to provide for their own populations, let alone the refugees. The conditions are worsening. We know that humanitarian aid is not enough. The New York Declaration is a firm statement by the states, by the UN General Assembly, that this situation needs a new model, a new way of coping. And they come together to say, we will share this and we will commit to responding to it collectively in a manner different than we've done before.
Our reporter Nathan King, who was just on before you, said that there was not a lot of concrete decisions made at the summit. What was resolved?
Well, I disagree. There were a lot of agreement around, one, that this is a situation that is internationally a shared responsibility. That was no small feat. These are countries that say, we know that the countries hosting refugees cannot go it alone. We need to come in there and support them much more rigorously. Very importantly, they've said this is not just a humanitarian solution that we need to seek. We have to address the root causes of displacement much more aggressively, but also we have to respond more comprehensively, bringing in not just humanitarian responses, but longer-term development programs that will assist refugees in the communities in which they live. They've also said this cannot be done without increased financing, both on the humanitarian and the development side, and we commit to providing that in a more predictable and sustainable way. So those are very significant statements. Now we need to see what happens in practice.
There was a report today, Ninette, that there's been this fire at this refugee camp in Lesbos where 4,000 actually had to evacuate. Is there any way to quantify if the migrants and the refugees are actually better off fleeing in many situations? I mean, after all, they are blocked by these tightened border controls in Europe now and cannot get to the wealthier countries.
It's an excellent question, but I have to say that in my experience, and both having been in Greece and also close to Syria, refugees flee because there is absolutely no alternative for them. If you look at the Syrians, for example, most of them have fled more than once in Syria, and they flee areas of bombing and gross violations of human rights. Them taking to the seas is their last-ditch effort, and many of them know that what awaits them is rather grim, but they live in the hope that they will be one of the ones that makes it to Europe safely, that's able to put their children in school, and that can foresee a future for themselves and their children.
Well, Ninette Kelley, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much joining us live in New York.